We've talked about artificial intelligence, we've talked about data systems and data structures, we've talked about financial systems and a specific focus on equity and aligning climate with social goals. We've talked about the social infrastructure that needs fixing. And a lot of these topics, to some extent, will come together at COP28 in just a short period of time here in the UAE. And Badr, you've been appointed as the Special Representative for Business and Philanthropy, and you're chairing the first ever Business and Philanthropy Climate Forum that will take place at COP28. Tell us a little bit more about how your aspirations for that moment connect to what you've seen in the last couple of days, and in general, what you're hoping to achieve there at COP28.
Thank you, Sadia. So just a quick observation, with the Philanthropy Council making up 1/3 of the stage, I think WEF is signaling what some of the coolest councils are, so go Nili. Just saying, thank you. So again, really thank you to WEF for bringing us all together. I do think it's very important to just take a step back and ask ourselves why, right? Why bother? Why do we bother coming here to talk about and debate over days, and not just at this forum, at Davos and any of these global gatherings, to debate and discuss some of these big ticket challenges in the world? Surely it's to safeguard the well-being of humanity and our habitat, starting with our most vulnerable. And I think this is especially pertinent as we all observe some of the incredible suffering taking place this past week in particular with some of the most vulnerable, really, and voiceless children, women, and men in the world. So putting humans, really, and humanity at the center of everything that we're doing, I think, is more critical than ever. And think about it, and now I'm speaking more figuratively. If your house is burning, how can you expect someone to take notice of changing their roofs to solar panels, or even to think about what it means to keep temperature rises less than 1.5 degrees by 2030? They're just thinking about how to survive another day, another hour. So this is really at the core of what Nili was talking about, which is we can no longer separate, now we're bringing back to climate, we can no longer separate the climate agenda from the human development agenda, and for that matter, the nature agenda as well. It can no longer be a zero-sum game where we're trying to progress one at the expense of another, because that simply won't fly. It just won't fly. And as we've seen, and as Nili mentioned and others mentioned, we have large parts of the world's population today addressing immediate needs and challenges, not just the 800 million people in the world who still don't have access to electricity, or the 2.4 billion people in the world who still don't have access to clean cooking fuels. So this is the opportunity, and that is in itself why COP28 needs to be that connector, that trust builder, bridging the trust divide that has existed, not just in climate and nature, but also within the climate and nature debate and discourse. So the inclusivity piece is really what underpins everything that COP28 will strive and towards achieving, and of course represents. Now, the business dimension is, I think, particularly important, because if we look and try and understand over a period of, 28 years or 27 years, why we haven't made the progress that we set out to back in 1995 when we started this COP process. Today we're sitting with global emissions 50% higher than they were back then. Try and analyze some of those issues and those challenges. There are, of course, a number of them, and I won't go into all of them unless you all brought your pajamas. But one key one is, of course, that connectivity issue. And business, really, and philanthropy can be and needs to play that role of connective tissue between COP presidencies. We have seen, of course, again, COP has fundamentally and traditionally been about negotiated outcomes, and which is very, very important and extremely important to move the needle. But why is it that it feels like we've had many more announcements and accords and perhaps less action and implementation? It's perhaps because business perhaps hasn't been as engaged and involved as it can and needs to be. And similarly with philanthropy, and this goes back to the discussions we've been having in our council, philanthropy, leaving aside the quantum dimension, it's often touted as perhaps not being large enough to make a difference. We know that's not the case. Philanthropy, from what we can measure today, is easily north of $1 trillion, more likely to be $2 trillion a year. But it's the quality of that capital, as again has been mentioned, really being far more equitable in its deployment, far more nimble, far more risk tolerant. And that is really why philanthropy can be, I think, that glue that binds business capital with government capital to help to create that multiplier effect on impact. So, as you mentioned, the COP presidency will host the Business and the Business and Philanthropy Climate Forum. The first 2 days of COP really in parallel with the World Climate Action Summit, or the Leaders Summit, to demonstrate that we can no longer see, again, these challenges through a siloed approach, as Nili had mentioned, and really embrace that multi-stakeholder approach that WEF has been championing since 1971, all coming together on the same platform to co-create solutions to our interconnected challenges. And I think the UAE really, as a host, has a unique opportunity to help to connect across sectors and across geographies to see that as a reality.
Thank you very much.